Hey, before I get into the video, I just want to say my audio quality isn't the best, and I want to say sorry about that. I do think that there is quite a bit of useful information in the video, so I hope you do stick around. But in future videos, it should sound a lot better. Thanks. Hope you enjoy. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to do sort of a breakdown of my process in creating my overraptor here. As well as just introducing some of my favorite workflow methods when working with Zbrush, especially when sculpting a creature, but really any 3D model in Zbrush. And this is going to be pretty quick, but it's going to be mostly focused on introducing some of those basic concepts um, that are just sort of fundamentals to my workflow, and anyone looking to get into ZBrush should have a good grasp of. First, I'm going to get out of perspective mode because it's easier to move around. This is my Overraptor 3D model, which I created a couple months ago. And this is a final, like, high resolution. You can see here it's like 22 million pixels, or polygons. And it's got quite a bit of detail on it at this stage. But obviously it took a lot to build it up to get to that point. So let's start from the beginning, which luckily I saved my my previous mesh before I started adding all that detail in. Now, this mesh I actually built up using Z-spheres, which I could insert a quick Z-sphere here just to give an example. Pretty simple, where if you hit Q to go into draw mode and draw another sphere on there, and then W to go into move mode, you can really control with Z-spheres the sort of shape of an animal. Let's say if I turned on topology, or symmetry, by hitting X for the X axis, then I can start to really build up something that looks vaguely familiar. But this isn't necessarily about how you get your base mesh, but how you move from there. Okay, let's get into this. If you're coming into this from a different project, go ahead and save a new iteration, and potentially even duplicate your model so that you can keep your original safe in case you do something that you don't like. But anyway, one of the first things that I do once I import my new model or create a Z-sphere, however I want to do it, to get started, is I go into geometry and turn on Dynamesh. You can see I already have it active on this version. I have my resolution quite high at 512, and that just makes it makes the polygons more dense, and it just makes it a little bit easier for me to work with, but it can be more resource intensive, so it's totally up to you. You can see that this is just a Dynamesh model and it's already at 1,000,000 polys. So the resolution is best suited to your own needs. But once I've got Dynamesh on, as an example, let me build up a little bit on this guy's neck here. Let me show you why Dynamesh is so important. You see, as I'm building into this area, it's really stretching out the polygons. And of course, this is a pretty intense example. But if I hit Shift F, quick way to get into my topology here, you can see, even though this is pretty dense, so it's still a little hard to see, but these are typically squares, and then this has just gone into rectangle zone. And we don't want that. as a side note, a lot of this little bit of weirdness you're seeing in the topology is pretty consistent for Dynamesh, and it's why you don't want to use it as a final result, but it's good for building a base mesh. Oop, I didn't turn off the other one. So, what I did there, I'll do it again. I hit Control and I dragged in the empty space off the model, and that sort of executes a command where it'll totally rewrite the topology of your entire model, but it'll smooth out, like it'll even out the topology everywhere. So we can build out all this interesting detail without having to worry about losing topology. And this is honestly the easiest way to feel like you're actually sculpting clay in Zbrush. It's just to build out your topology with Dynamesh. Now, as I mentioned, it's definitely not a good way to finish your model. But this is just how we'll get the basic shapes of your model complete. Now, I'm going to undo all that. Go back to how it was originally. Because if I get out of that mode. If you look at this whole thing, this entire thing was created in Dynamesh. You can see we've got all this interesting detail. Since I've got the resolution so high, I can get some basic shapes in there, even as far as between the fingers at some points. And it's all very basic, but it's got the exact amount of information that I need at this point. Now, once I reach this point on my model, it's time to turn off Dynamesh. And there are a few things that I want to go over, but one of them, we're going to need a little bit more surface detail in here. So let me show you how to do an alpha. I'm just using my standard brush. I've switched it to a spray mode, and I've got a wrinkle alpha, which comes with Zbrush. And I'm going to turn my intensity down and my brush size up. And you can see as I'm drawing in here, this is it's pretty rough, because even at 1,000,000 polys, or now we're down to 5. Oh yeah, that's because I had both of these on at once. But we're at 500,000 polys. It's pretty rough, but I'm using it as an example, because I want to save some of this. Well, I don't know. I don't think that I like that. Let's go back. I'll show you the alpha when it's a bit higher. Let's say instead that I want a little bit of detail right here. I just want a little bit of detail that I can show off. It's a little bit finer. This is just an example, but there. That's doable. That looks good. Alright. So, I've turned off Dynamesh. Right? I've turned off Dynamesh. But the topology is not at a very good state right now. If you look at it, it's all polygons, even though it's a little bit gridded out at the moment. It's little squares, and there's no flow to it. It's evenly spaced throughout the entire model. And sometimes you'll see little pinch points, just like scattered throughout the model, that just look a little bit off. I think the resolution is kind of preventing that a little bit here, but there are some obvious points, like maybe right there. Some obvious points that this is a Dynamesh model. What I want to do is first, I'm going to open up a new tool called Z-Remesher Guides. And I am going to start drawing around the mesh. Oh, my pen doesn't need to be that small. I'm gonna start just drawing around the mesh areas that I would like to connect. That was a pretty rough circle, but it's fine. I'm on my mouse and keyboard. Say I have some very specific topology flows that I want to do here. I want this bottom of the jaw. We just created this interesting new wrinkle. Nope, I don't want to do that. Anyway, just a little bit of flow to sort of help guide my ZRemesh. Now, I'm just going to hit ZRemesh with all the basic settings for now. And we'll see how it looks. The eye might be a little bit wonky. Yeah, because my circle was off. But see, now this is something that you might be a little bit more familiar with if you're working out of Maya or Blender. Actual rectangular topology. Quads. And, but you might say that we've actually lost quite a bit of detail. Which I don't even know if the wrinkles were necessary, but there's some obvious lack of detail in this model. And yeah, you can just divide it a few times, but we've still lost some of that. So let me undo that a few times. I want to be back down to 0. There's something else we can do. Which I didn't actually prepare myself for, did I? No, I did not. Here, let me go back to before we did that. First we need to do, and this is fine, we can do it with those on there. Do a quick duplicate, it removes the guides. Let's keep that one as the original. This is going to be the base. And this one is going to be our working copy. Alright, do the quick ZRemesh again. Don't need that. It's important at this point that we do have 2 versions of the model. So now you can actually see a little bit with the original one underneath it where we're lacking in some ways. What I'm going to do next is actually down here at the bottom of this subtool folder, there's the project option, and I'm just going to hit project all. And kind of hard to see the difference right now, but if I go, and by the way, everything else is turned off except for the base model that we then duplicated, and then this is the remesh version, this is the Dynamesh version. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide it. And we're going to do it again. Project all. I'm hitting Control D now to divide it so I don't have to go between menus. The higher detail we go, the harder or the longer it would take. Hang on, yeah, we're up to 4. See, now it's taking a minute. Now you can see, oh, it's almost right on top of that. I'm just going to do 4 for now, but I'll divide it a few more times so that we've got 6 subdivision levels. Ooh, it's going a little laggy. We'll see how long that lasts. But now, look at that. We've got some of those shapes that were in there. And yeah, that's really rough, but it's an example. But all the rest of my more finely tuned shapes are all there. Here's a good example of when ZRemeshing can go wrong, and projecting. This is mostly projecting. And the way I'll fix that, I'll actually go down until I figure out. Yeah, it started from the beginning, didn't it? Well, actually, this would be a good spot to more carefully put down some guides. I can just smooth it out a little bit, but just like that. But honestly, it'd be good to take a little bit more care with the Z remesh at that point. But so there are some things to watch out for. But other than that, now I have a high resolution topology flow that I can work with. Now, there are a few other things that I want to address. We were doing wrinkles earlier. This is the point where I would do wrinkles. But first, I keep saying that, but first, I want to show you layers. I use layers quite a lot when I'm getting into this part of the fine-tuning detail work stage. First, I'm going to hit this button, which makes a new layer, rename it to base. Then I'm going to make another layer. So that first one is just, it creates this entire thing into a base layer. I don't want to touch that. This next one, I'm going to call wrinkles, because that's what my brush is. Now you can see when I made this new layer, this one is currently recording, which means that I can make my changes. Go ahead and, ooh, that's pretty rough. I mean, even as an example, that was pretty rough. I do a little bit of that. I'm going to smooth it out so it smooths into that shape. And then turn this off to where it's not recording anymore. Now whenever I try and click on it, it tells me that I've got layers active and I can't do anything. Now there are a few things to do about that. I can either activate a layer and work on that, or with all the layers on, because of course you can turn layers off, but all the layers typically have to be on for this to work. You can just bake them, and then it just goes back to being a normal mesh that you can edit from there. But let's go back. When I'm not in recording mode, I can also change the intensity of it, which, be warned, then it can go to negative in intensity. This is taking a while because my resolution is so bad. But yeah, then it starts to go, it pops out instead of popping in, which is definitely one way to do it. I can also duplicate it to make the effect more intense. Sometimes I'll do that because I have a habit of making my details too subtle. So then I'll duplicate a layer. And yeah, I'll just work off of that for quite a long time until I'm done with that specific layer, and then maybe I'll go on to a scales layer or a feather layer or whatever, which I'll show you later. But there is one more tool that is really handy before I really start going into it. If I go ahead and delete this layer and then start a new one again. Down here in the morph target folder, I can hit store morph target, which just stores the entire mesh as it is, how it is, right now. Now, if I put in some of this detail, which by the way, normally I'll make this really subtle and then build it up. But I can actually turn on the morph tool. I can change the intensity of it, and I can start to smooth it back to how it was when I clicked that button to store the morph target. The interesting thing about this is, let's say now I've got some of this interesting detail. Let's build it up a little bit. I got some of this interesting detail. Let's hit the store, or okay. To move to this next step, I'm going to actually delete the morph target and then store a new one. Let's do something ugly. I'm going to, as an example, draw out some scales. And you see, like, I'm going over some of this layer that I've got going on here. I want to have a decent spread so that I can show you. It's pretty rough. High school student me drawing dragon scales. But anyway, let's say, just as an example, that I wanted to do that. But then I want to smooth it into the mesh. If I just do the smooth tool, look at the wrinkles underneath. Yeah, all this detail is smoothing out, but so is all the nice detail that I worked so hard to build up before. If I use the morph one instead, we can really, really get in there and smooth this new information in there without ruining the wrinkles. So you can see how in a more serious approach, that could be really important. But then, I don't like it, so I'm going to get rid of it. But between the alphas, the layers, and the morph targets, I get so much work done so quickly. Okay, so we've covered how to control your topology, how to add detail, how to control that level of detail. But let's go over how to control specific areas of your mesh that you're actually looking at. And that is by, of course, polygroups. Polygroups, I hit Shift F to look at my topology. There are ways that, of course, it looks like it's taken the lowest subdivisions of here, but anyway. There are ways that you can control specific body groups, and you can get really detailed with it. But if I hit Control Shift and then click on a polygroup, I can select it, and I can unselect it. So I don't, like, say I don't want to see that one. I don't want to see this one. I don't want to see this one. It's taking a minute because it's such a big project. But this is one way in which I can both control active polygroups, and then in more advanced functions, you can use it for a variety of uses. But anyway, this is just what I'm using it for at the moment. One other way, let's say that, let's turn off perspective. Let's say that I wanted to work on the feet, but I don't want to have the rest of the body in the way. You can see these claws can get in the way. If I want to look down at it, the body can get in the way. If I hit Control Shift again, and then drag from the empty space, now I only have this active. Now, these are really simple to set up. Let's go ahead and go back into my low poly version because it's easier to handle. It's not as big. And say I just wanted this head. Let me get the lasso tool. I'm just going to mask it, go into the polygroups tab, and group mask. Then say I wanted then to go into this job, but then if I just do this, well, that's fine. But like, let's say I did that, I grouped that, that's fine. Then I wanted this to be a little bit more detailed, right? That's one way you could do it, but now you got this awkward section. That's what I'm trying to get to, is this awkward section. What I would do instead is, let's just start over. Select the whole thing and group it, and it brings us back to where we were before. I'm going to start with my more detailed one right there. And then I'm actually going to click it and then click it again to get rid of it. And then I can do some of this more detailed stuff without ruining or leaving any weird spots. So then, like, as soon as I'm done with these two, I want to make a neck one, right? But I don't want to do it like that. I want to get rid of both of those so that I can select it and keep it. So, of course, I kept the same color again, but that's how I would do that. And it's also good for quick selection, quick masking, and I can do whatever I want down here and not have to worry about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. But yeah, let me show you real quick on my higher poly one. This is how this looks now, but it was like that when I started. Let's see. I just quickly grab this up. I think that it's just the program optimizing it so that it doesn't take up as much memory. But there, see, except that it's the same color again. It's better. The seam doesn't matter too bad. Now here's an interesting thing though, is when you Z-remesh it, it will often just remove the poly groups, but if you hit keep groups, then it'll be fine. Should try and hold on to those for you. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Go ahead and let me know if you have any other questions, and I'll see you again next time.